So I want to invite us just to take a moment to close our eyes and to land in this space together. So if you feel comfortable to do that, and you can keep your eyes open if you don't, but if you feel comfortable, just closing your eyes. And, you know, we're not together in person. We're a virtual circle, and each of us are sitting wherever we are in England, on the land somewhere where you are. And just take a moment to just kind of let your body feel and connect with the land that you're presently sitting on. And maybe this is something you've not considered before. Maybe you live in a city and you have an idea that because you're in a city, it's not really the land. It's not beautiful nature. It's not. But everywhere was once wild, with much growing. And to see what you notice. If you do notice anything, whether there's a way in which our bodies are always talking to the land, whether we're aware of it or not. There's a constant resonance that our bodies look for to see, can we feel at home on the land? Can we feel a sense of belonging on the land where we are? And that becomes more difficult the more humans have kind of intervened with the land, but it's still there. Maybe this is familiar to you and you're very connected to the land where you live. And maybe this isn't something you've considered before. It's all okay. And if you can't feel that connection, that's fine. It's just a little invitation to see what you notice. And do you know anything about the land where you are? Do you know any of its history? Do you know what's happened on that land in deep time? Do you have a sense maybe of why you chose to live where you do? And was it for reasons like relationship or job or affordability, or some reason other than I feel drawn to this land, I feel drawn to be here? And our modern lives are such that it's very difficult for us to choose where we live in that kind of a way, because there's so many needs that we have at a basic survival level that often determines and dictates where we live. And it might not be our deepest want. That doesn't mean that we can't still connect with the land where we are and have the possibility of it feeling like a sanctuary, a place that we can rest into, feel held by and connected to, even if we're 10 stories up. Just taking a couple of deep breaths. Ready, just coming back. Esmeralda, is just someone trying to come in. Could you just check the call's locked? So I don't know how much you know about me and the work that I offer. So I'm just going to share a little bit on the basis that you know nothing. And yeah, so my journey really began when I was probably 4 years old, but that's for another time. But when I was 19, I was a traveler, and I was living on the land. I was living with a traveler in a van with my partner at the time. And it was the time of Margaret Thatcher, was late 80s. And I don't, some of you might remember, if you're old enough, the Battle of the Beanfields, where the travellers got, you know, completely invaded by the police. And I made a vow that day that I would create a sanctuary, a space in nature where we could come, where people could come and remember what it is to feel safe on land, to have the right to express ourselves freely on land that isn't controlled. Most of my life as a traveler, living on the land, being an activist, living in community, running the courses and everything that I do. And when I was just 48, when I thought I had enough money, I went to the estate agent and said, I want to buy some land. And I ended up here at EarthHeart, where I've been for the last 10 years. And I feel, I talk about the land as my first marriage. It feels like the most important relationship that I have in my life, because it supports me so profoundly. And in a way, for me, the work that I offer, it's like at least 50% of it is actually the land. It's not me, and anything, and most of the stuff that comes through me, I feel like I almost can't really take credit for, you know, whatever teachings I'm bringing, because actually they're coming almost through me rather than of me. And they come through my personality, obviously, and this more than human world has so much to teach us, especially at this time. We are at such a threshold at this point in the story of humans. And this time that we're in now, it's like I've been sort of talking about this for the last 35 years and feeling like it sort of falls into a void a lot of the time. I'm going, we need to prepare because there's this huge change coming. And meanwhile, we sort of carry on chopping wood, fetching water and getting on with our lives. And now we're at a point where it's difficult to ignore what is happening because it's coming closer and closer to us. And it's quite a time to be alive. It's quite a time to be alive. And we're right on a threshold. So this circle of belonging that I created, in a way, all the stuff that I've been doing for the last 35 years, all the different strands of my work, the leadership programs, the working in community, the setting up of community, the living in community, all of the internal sort of what I would call consciousness work, you know, healing work that I've been doing. This journey, this circle of belonging, feels like it's actually a culmination of all of that. And it's actually the very heart of everything that I've ever done. It's almost like I've been able to condense it down into this alchemy. Because I've spent, you know, in the 30 years that I've been doing this, and I've spent a lot of time living in community, and I'm in community in all kinds of ways, like to the very deliberate community where a group of people say, hey, let's live together in a house, or hey, let's buy some land and live on it, and to being in the street that we live in a city, and how we create community in our lives. And I hear so many people, I have heard so many people over the decades say, oh, I just want to live in community on the land. I just want to have a more meaningful life. I want to have more meaningful work. I want to live with people who get me. I want to experience life in such a way that I feel welcome where I am, that I feel like I belong. This sense of belonging that goes deeper than sort of, well, I'm allowed to be here because I've paid my rent, but a belonging at a kind of soul level, which I think we've inherently lost through sort of modern evolution. Francis Weller talks about when we were born, that we were meant to be welcomed into this world by the village. And by the village, he was talking about, there's all the people in the village. So you might have 40 pairs of eyes and 40 pairs of hands, and all these hearts when a child is born going, welcome. You're meant to be here. You have a place here. This land has held your ancestral line. All your ancestors have been born on this very piece of land. They know this land and they know you. And that their role is to welcome you and support you to find out who you are. It's not to shame you and tell you that you're not enough this way and that you'll only be loved if you behave that way, etc., etc. And imagine how different our lives would look if we had been welcomed into the world this way, that we had this inherent feeling of belonging, that we're welcome, that there's a sense of welcoming, that we have a place in that village, we have a place in that circle. We don't have to question, we don't have to feel like we have to earn it, that it's just inherently there for us. And even if, as we grow up, or maybe as adults, we leave the village, we go off on an adventure, we go off, hunting for a few weeks, or we go off for years on some traveling adventure. In our psyche, we know that village exists, and we know we belong there, and we know we're welcome. And that changes our experience of how we go out into the world. DNA changes every single thing. There we go. There's a juxtapose. The modern world and everything that I'm talking about. So this sense of belonging is what I've heard people talking about again and again and again and again. And having worked in community in all kinds of ways, helping to set up community, being asked to come in and help resolve conflict in community, where there's disharmony in community, what I've seen over and over and over is, because there's so many people saying, I just want to live with people that get me, and I want to live in a more community-based way, not the communities of the 70s. I don't mean that, but like some sense that we're with our people, our tribe, our sense of being welcomed. And what I've seen over and over again is that the reason that that doesn't happen isn't because of the practical skills, and it isn't because of lack of resources or of finances or of rules and regulations that our country has. What I see is that we don't know how to navigate the difficulties we bump up against when we start relating with humans. When those bits of conflict emerge, when there's a conflict of needs, where one person needs this and another person needs that, and it seems like both those people can't have their needs met. And so in a way, there's a wisdom. Why would anyone, invest and commit to living with a group of people and potentially then being very trapped when they're like, oh my God, in 6 months' time, I'm absolutely going to hate you and I got to live with you for the next God knows how long. You trigger me every 5 seconds. Your needs seem to trump everything. My needs are at the bottom of the pile. I don't know how to express my needs. I don't know what to do when there's conflict. I just freeze and panic and want to run away, or whatever our responses are. So for me, having spent sort of a lot of the first half of my life being very out there in the world, trying to make those outer changes, which are really, really important, I kind of started to realize, like, hang on a minute, what about this inner change? Because unless I changed something in here, everything I was doing was sort of driven by fear and anger and my love for the world ultimately. But the energy that I was doing that with was my sort of panic and my fear. And I go, look, we got to do something about this, come on, you know, that kind of energy. And all that really does is create more of that energy, because it's the energy that we do something from and the consciousness that we do something from that has the biggest impact, more than the actual action of the thing. Like how we dig a hole is more impacted by the place we reside in ourselves when we're digging that hole than it is of just the action of picking up the spade and putting it in our hand. If we are doing something from love and a deep, well-resource of feeling like our soul is resourced and we know we belong, and that there's something really exciting that we're leaning into, that energy then ripples out because people feel that that comes from us. So in the second half of my life, I've been much more focused on the inner shift. And that doesn't mean I've abandoned the outer shift. What I've seen is that actually we need both of these. It's like the right and the left wing of the bird. They absolutely have to work in harmony together. And some of us feel more drawn to the inner change, to the shifting consciousness, doing the inner work of our soul. And some of us feel more drawn to those kind of outer stuff of getting out there and making those practical and, you know, changes in the world. Both are needed equally. Both are needed. Ultimately, we want to be able to find both of those within us. But that's a big ask, because we got to play to our strengths. So this is why we need the circle, because we can support and help each other in that, so that we can really support each person to bring through their gift, their particular thing that they can bring to this change. So this work is deeply personal, deeply personal. It's fundamentally the work of looking at what I call our soul wound, which is like that core original imprinted wound that we got through our well-meaning parents and all of that. This isn't about sort of, you know, shaming others and blaming others, but recognizing this soul wound that we carry is actually the gift that can bring us into our power and back into living a more soulful, meaningful life. So the work is deeply, deeply personal, because it's rooted in looking at this soul wound and giving you tools and ways to actually learn how to relate to this wound and ultimately have it in the passenger seat rather than in the driver's seat of our life. And once that's happening, we're going to be far more effective in creating the life that really works for us. So it has to begin with us. How do we create the life that we want to live, that has the meaning that we want to have, that gives us a sense of our purpose, of our worth, of our welcome, and of our value? But if we're only focused on that, I don't believe we'll ever truly be satisfied, because we are interrelational beings. We need each other. We absolutely need each other. And in a way, one of the positives of what's happening right now is we're forced into being reliant on each other. And that's a great thing. I mean, obviously it would be great if it wasn't through such horrible crisis, but we are learning to have to connect and rely and need each other in an interdependent way, which is ultimately to be celebrated. So this circle of belonging is really to offer you a way that you've got a year with a circle of people to do this deep soul wound work. And the course in a way is the practice ground, and then you go out back into your life and take it back in. So in a way, it's got an element of leadership in it. It begins with being in leadership in your own life. And then how can you take that back into your life and support the environment that you're in and create an interconnected web in your own life? It also offers you the opportunity, because it's all on the land, it's all land-based, that you could come here at times other than when the modules are just running, because I want you to have the experience of the land over 4 seasons, so that we can really, really start to understand the rhythms and the cycles that are happening in our bodies through being immersed in the land. So in that way, it's quite different, because I live here on the land. I've been working with this land for 10 years. It's not like a random rented venue. So it means that I'm here tending the land the whole time. And that means that it's possible to come here at other times other than when we're gathering for those group modules, and be with the land and be nourished by the land, and to feel what would it be like to let my body be in a deep relationship with a piece of land, and how that can support my life, how that can inform what might work to help my life work. So community, I really mean it in the broadest sense. You might be really loving, living in the city where you are, and, you know, in the street that you live in, and you've got your work, and that's, you know, and it all works really well. But there's just this sense of, yeah, but I feel a bit like I'm not really plugged in to a community. I don't feel like I belong. I don't feel like I'm welcome. I don't really know. I don't have this deep sense of my tribe, of my people, of the ones who get me. And that's what I want you to go away with. The way that we work is quite a mixture. Some of it will be being on the land and giving you practices to go. I mean, we're surrounded by 200,000 acres of forest, so we'll spend quite a bit of time just in the wilds and in the forest doing all kinds of beautiful stuff, sleeping out under the stars with a fire. And then there'll be times where we'll gather in circle, and there'll be times, lots of times, where we're going to give you really, really core practices that help work on this soul wound. And these practices and methods I've developed over 30 years. And the one thing I would say is, if you want to work with me and my team, it's not just me, but if you want to work with me, it's like I work deep. If you want to work deep, and you're like, you know what, I've done lots of stuff. I've done lots of stuff, but you know what? I'm really ready. I am ready to fully claim this life that I've got and meet whatever it is that's in the way of me fully loving who I am and my life really working, and whatever this change is that I want to see happening. How can I be a part of that? Then I'd say, come on in. If you're looking for a sort of quick fix, maybe make yourself feel a little bit better here and there, or, you know, you just think it might be a little bit of fun. I mean, it will be fun. It will be damn good fun, but it'll be so much more than that. Yeah. And that's why there is an application process, because I want to be sure that this is right for you, that it's what you're looking for. And part of this call also is for you to just get a sense of me. And I mean, I can see there, some of you, I know you've met me before, but just to get a sense of me. I would love to just kind of open the floor, and if people have questions, I'd really, really love to hear your questions, because I think that's the best way that we can kind of get a feel of this together. And I'm also aware that it can be a little bit intimidating maybe to ask a question in front of all these people. Oh, what if my question is stupid and everyone's judging my question and this kind of thing, and I'll probably not be able to speak very well, and you know, all of that. So I want to say right from the get-go that all your questions are welcome, that you're welcome. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Absolutely not. There's just a beautiful exploration here. Beautiful. Thank you. That's a great question. Yes, absolutely. So how I see the soul wound is that there's this ancestral line that sits behind us. There's various ways in which this soul wound ends up being its unique little encapsulation, which is in part what we experience in this life and everything of our upbringing, but is also what we carry from the ancestral line behind us, all the stuff that we picked up through the generations. Like, you know, my mother and my father parented me because the way their parents parented them, and because the way their parents parented them, and because everything that was going on in the culture going back and back and back. This is what I mean by there's no point in blaming anyone, because nobody, you know, nobody deliberately set out to hurt. You know, we don't hurt, we only hurt each other because we're disconnected and acting from that wound. So in that way, yes, absolutely, it's coming from all those different threads. But the practices and the ways in which I work with it, you don't need to be on board with that. Like, for some people, they might not see it that way, and it doesn't really matter, because we can still work with it in the same way. From what you've said, I can imagine that it would give you a whole bunch of tools of how to be more in community when difficulties come, to be leadership in that community, how to be able to take more lead, get ideas about that. Brilliant. That sounds like, yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you. Really lovely to hear about your vision. It's so ripe at the moment for me, because, you know, over the years, when I was younger and I had more energy, my groups used to have like 20, 30, 40 people. I mean, yeah, the more the better. I just want to help as many people as possible. And I felt like I had to sort of get very, very big to kind of keep all of that in and be able to sort of hold all of that. And I went through the menopause and I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. And because of the depth that my work, you know, as I've grown over my journey, my work goes deeper and deeper. And what I've started to see is the deeper I go, the less people that I can have in that circle to make sure that everybody really gets my full kind of focus and input and attention. I've noticed there's a critical mass. And once you go beyond that, it's a beautiful experience, everybody's energy mixing, but you can kind of get lost in the crowd. And the intimacy of a smaller circle, I find much safer, creates a lot of safety. And it means that this work we do on the soul wound can just be held with a much stronger container. And this feeling of belonging and feeling welcomed embeds itself in a much, much deeper way. So I'm no longer in the kind of the big crowd thing. It's more like enough people that we can really get to know every single person in the circle, rather than say, oh yeah, you're on this, but oh, I couldn't possibly have time to talk to all of you because there's just so many people and I get overwhelmed. I didn't say. I was being quite elusive. The truth is, I haven't entirely decided. And most of the reason for that is because I work very intuitively and I work with my own body and my own energy, and I'll be feeling into it as I go along. And I'll just know when I feel, you know, it's like I'll read my body and I'll be going, ah, that's it there. That's it. And then I'll just close the bookings. So I'm not deliberately being evasive, but that is how I work. Yeah. What I would say is that I am really passionate about creating diversity in my circles. That's really, really important to me. And I will go as far as halting bookings in some areas in order to allow other areas to catch up and stuff like that. The other thing that feels really important to say is that I've been doing a huge amount of work around training to be trauma informed in the last 3-4 years. I also run a training now, a weekend training on being trauma informed as a group facilitator. And that for me sits at heart of the work. I'm no longer interested in those big high energy, massive kind of emotional roller coasters that you come, you know, at the time you think, wow, it's amazing. And then you get home and you're like, what on earth just happened? And you can't integrate it because we've just been sort of, you know, in this river that kind of we got taken by. So even though the work is deep, we go incredibly slow, especially because we're doing such deep work. And I'll be teaching you about how to stay in a regulated nervous system, how to manage our own trauma, how to manage our triggers. That's all the soul wound work. It's all of that. You know, how to resource ourselves in those moments and actually practice that. This is really gritty. Let's really get down there. This isn't sort of wafty. Yeah, great. Let's all look at a candle and transform. This is like getting right down in the mud of it, looking at that wound and learning how to love it, because ultimately that's the change that needs to happen, is how do we truly come into love with this wound and hold that place in us that feels completely exiled, that lives under a blanket of shame, that it doesn't feel welcome at all. So how do we integrate these exiled parts, these parts that have been shamed, made wrong, condemned, told we're not enough, told we're too much, told we don't matter, all of those like core beliefs that we you know end up with that then run our lives. You know, like we really believe these beliefs, and we kind of all our relating is almost can like be through the filter of that belief. We're looking for evidence all the time. Ah, yeah, you see the way you responded to me just then, that's evidence that I'm not enough. You know, that's proof that I don't matter because you did this and didn't do that. So it's like really bringing in all of those parts that feel shame and exile so that they can like rest in our loving arms, and then extend that out to knowing what would it actually be like if I really let myself receive love and feel welcomed by these people. And then how can I go back to my life and make that happen there? It would be difficult to sort of go through all the practices and explain them all. What I would say is the methods that I've developed are incredibly simple. They're always body-based. They're always looking at the whole dimension of us. So they're looking at it at a spiritual level, a physical level, an emotional level, and a psychological level, so that we're integrating the ways in which those wounds, those triggers activate in our system. So rather than just looking at, well, what's the mental cognition that goes on? It's like, what's actually happening in my body? Because all of this is stored in the body. And if we only look at it at a cognition level, we won't ever fully integrate it all. If we only look at it at a body level and don't look at the cognition, we won't integrate it. If we don't look at the emotional body and learn to manage what seems like unbearable pain that we couldn't, you know, that we went through the first time, you know, and then we try to push that away and get into addiction and all kinds of stuff. How do we find a healthy relationship to our feelings, to our emotions, so that they don't hijack us? And we don't have to put so much effort into pushing them away because we fear them so much. So the practices that we do are, you know, really with ourselves mostly, but then there's also practices that we do where we can support each other to do that really tender, vulnerable work around being able to come out and show this part that we're just like, oh my God, if I show this part, I will definitely not be welcomed. I'll be shamed, I'll be exiled, I'll be made wrong, I'll be flung out the nest, all of that. And that we work towards a place where we feel like we can take a tiny step into that and have an experience of like, oh, actually it's okay. Because I don't think we can heal just by doing our own personal inner work. You know, we're interrelational beings. The wounds were created in relationship, right? So they have to be healed in relationship. It doesn't make sense to me that you try to heal something on your own that was created in a relational space. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why, I mean, one-to-one is great, but I don't believe it's enough. That's, you know, such a big part of this circle of why it's so powerful, is because it accelerates that process and it brings completion to that inner personal journey. It integrates it all. All the dates are on the website. It's a series of 6 modules and they're over 4.5 days. So we're here on the land together and it's spread over the year. And then there'll be opportunities as well to sort of come here either by yourself or with some members of the group if you want to, and just be here for the day or be here for a couple of days and just sort of integrate and, you know, whatever's happening in your life. And that welcoming practice that you're talking about that we did at Buddhafield, that is one of the core practices that we do. That's sort of really like the very heart of the work. And there's loads and loads of layers to it. So the one we did at Buddhafield was incredibly simple, where you were, you know, where you just got to feel welcomed exactly as you are, without having to be anything, without having to try to be more than you are, to try to be the best person yourself, the best version of you. Was literally, you're welcome just as you are. And that practice is the core practice, and we just take that practice and we do it in about 40 different ways. We just go down through all of these layers, looking at all the different parts of us, and that's a practice you can then take away and you know, use in your life with people that you know. And you know what you're saying about Buddhafield, that's a really good example, because a lot of the power of that was because there were other people in the space, and the collective energy was in part what created the power of it. And that's exactly the point, is to have this, you know, we need each other in that way. It's like the whole becomes this more than the sum of the parts. That makes sense. And yeah, it doesn't have to be a physical place at all. I mean, when I say community, I mean community in the broadest sense of the world. It might be the community of your family, you know, it might be the community of your street. It's that sense of belonging. Where do I belong? And that begins with us and the land, you know, maybe where we actually are, but then where do we belong within the context of sort of, there's more to this life than just me eating, sleeping, going to work, going to the loo, you know. It's like that belonging of something that gives our life meaning, which I think we fundamentally lost. I think that's why we're in the mess we're in, because we've lost meaning. We've just become this sort of robotic, you know, experience of life. Your dream sounds yeah, right on it. I think you're onto it there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing it. Probably got time for one more question, if anyone has. Yeah, Ambuka. Yes, so in the winter, because the way I work is very much with the seasons and the cycles and leaning into the energies that are presenting themselves, because those are all reflecting parts of us. So we have an amazing earth lodge here, which you might have seen pictures of. It's that building with the fire and the, so we do ceremonies in there, and what we'll do on those winter times is you'll be invited to come and spend, you know, 24 hours or 36 hours in there, and we go deep into a dreaming space. We sleep in there, we eat in there, we spend silence in there, we sing in there, we just be together in that ceremonial way and use that time to resource ourselves, basically. It could be the whole group. It could absolutely be the whole group. But I've just put optional because some people just find that committing to that many dates is just unsustainable in their life.
Oh, okay.
It's just, you know, they may not be able to take that many days off work. They may not, you know, they might have children, and it just gives a little bit of flexibility to make it accessible to different people's needs.
All right.
I mean, in my experience, you know, people come to all of it. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years and people come to all of them generally, but I've just learned over time that just giving that bit of flexibility can be helpful. We probably need to finish because we're just coming up to time. And I want to give you a little teaser. I want to give you a little opportunity, you know, an offer, mainly because, you know, shamelessly, I just want you to come because I really passionately believe in what I'm doing. I really passionately believe that I'm making a difference, and that what this is significant and rich, and will be really valuable to you. So if you book before the 31st of January, you get a 15% discount off the total fees. And also have a look on the page on the website, because you'll see there that there's something called a friends ticket. And because I'm all about coming together in circle and recognizing our interdependence, it encourages you to come with a friend. So if you come and you book with a friend and you both book at the same time, you each get a massive discount off the price. So go and check it out. I can't remember how much it is, but it's quite a lot. And a friend could be someone that you met on the call here. I want to really thank you for your questions, because they're just brilliant. They're great questions. Yeah, hopefully that's been helpful. Raise your hand if you feel that you've kind of learned something this evening that you didn't know. Excellent. Thank you so much. And yeah, I look forward to the possibility of seeing you. And if you're still not sure, the way it works, you've got options. You can book a 15-minute call with me. That's just like a 15-minute free call just to sort of ask me about it. And you can do that through the website. You just click on the link on that page. And then the next step after that, if you wanted to, is you can book your place, which still doesn't commit you, but you're booking and paying a deposit, which holds a place in the circle until we've done module 1, which is a Zoom call with me, which is longer, where we can explore a little bit more whether this is right for you. And if after that Zoom call, you feel like, yeah, I'm all good to go, then you're in. If at the end of that call you think, yeah, I'm not so sure actually, then we just send you your deposit back. So there's stages. You don't have to leap in and commit cold. You know, you've got 2 opportunities there to really speak with me and dive in and explore. So those are all the options. Thank you everyone for joining, and yeah, I look forward to seeing you soon maybe. Bye for now.